My name used to be Hannah Brooks. I was 27 years old. The afternoon, my father chose a ribbon-cutting ceremony at my brother's car dealership, over the moment I passed the Massachusetts bar exam on my first try. I was sitting in the marble lobby of the courthouse in Boston, clutching my printed results with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally got through to my mother on the fourth call, I could hear horns honking in the background. The tinny sound of a brass band. Some announcer shouting my brother's name over a loudspeaker like he was a boxer walking into a ring. Hannah. Sweetie. Can this wait? We're about to cut the ribbon. Your brother finally made it. I told her I had made it too. I told her I had passed. I told her that 3 years of law school, 2 summers, clerking for free, and an entire adult life spent believing that one day they would sit in the front row and actually see me, had all just become real. There was a pause. Not a warm one. Just the kind of pause you use when you're deciding how little you can get away with saying. Oh, honey. That's wonderful. We'll take you out for ice cream this weekend. Okay, Daddy's got to smile for the photographers. You understand? I did understand. That was the worst part. I understood exactly what was happening. Because I had been understanding it for 27 years. Before I tell you what I did next, and how one quiet decision turned my family's gleaming new dealership empire into a federal case on the local news. Dame a favor. Tell me in the comments what city you're listening from, and what you're doing right now. I want to know how far this story travels. Because for most of my life, my voice didn't even travel across my own living room. If you've ever been the quiet kid in a house that only had room for one spotlight, you already know the shape of my childhood. My father worshipped my older brother the way some men worship football teams. Loud. Public. Unconditional. And always at someone else's expense. My brother could fail out of community college twice. Total 2 cars before he was 20. And get fired from 3 sales jobs. And my father would sit at the kitchen table and say, "He's a big picture guy. He just needs his shot." Meanwhile, I was bringing home honor roll certificates, national merit letters, full scholarship offers, and my mother would slide them into a drawer like expired coupons. That's great. Honey, could you help your brother study for his driver's test retake? I spent most of my teenage years tutoring him, covering for him, and listening to my parents brag to neighbors about how sharp he was, how charming he was, how he was going to run the family one day. Nobody ever asked me what I was going to run. They just assumed I'd run errands. When my brother finally convinced my father to co-sign on a used car dealership in a strip mall outside Worcester, it was treated in our household like a royal coronation. My father sold stocks. My mother cashed out a retirement annuity. I was in my first year of law school at Boston College, eating ramen and working nights at the campus library. And I still got a group text asking if I could contribute even a little to believe in your brother's dream. I didn't contribute. I sent a card. My mother didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. So no. That phone call from the courthouse lobby didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time I heard with full clarity what my family had been saying my whole life in smaller, quieter ways. Your wins are background noise. His wins are the music. I walked out onto the courthouse steps, holding my results, and realized I'd been clapping for someone else's parade since I could walk. A woman I'd studied with in bar prep spotted me by the fountain. She hugged me so hard, my papers crumpled. "Your people must be losing their minds," she said. "Front row seats at swearing in." Right, I smiled. The way you learn to smile when you don't want to explain your entire family to a stranger in under a minute. They had another commitment. She pulled back and looked at me like I'd just told her. The sky was green. "Hannah, you passed the bar. That's not a commitment conflict. That's a choice. I wanted to argue with her. I couldn't. Because she was right. And I'd been doing the arithmetic on that exact equation since I was 8 years old, and nobody came to my spelling bee. Have you ever had a person you barely know speak the truth about your life more clearly in one sentence than your family ever has in a lifetime? I went home to my studio apartment in Brighton that night. I didn't celebrate. I sat on the floor with my back against my couch and stared at the ceiling and let the silence feel loud for a change. And at some point, around midnight, I opened my laptop and did two things. The first was pull up a legal name change application I had bookmarked 2 years earlier and never opened. The second was open an email I had been ignoring for 3 weeks from a consumer protection law firm in New York called Hargrove and Associates. They had seen my law review article on predatory auto financing, and they wanted me to interview for an associate position. I had been dragging my feet because moving away from Boston meant moving away from my family. And some broken part of me had still been hoping that maybe once I passed the bar, they would finally drive up. Finally show up. I finally say the words. The ribbon-cutting photo posted on my mother's Facebook page at 1147 p.m. There was my father, my mother, my brother, and a banner that read, Brooks Premier Auto, a family tradition of trust. I zoomed in on the word family until it blurred. Then I typed into the name change form, new legal name. Harper Reed. Harper, because I'd loved that name since I read To Kill a Mockingbird in 7th grade. And Reed, because it was my grandmother's maiden name. My grandmother was the only person in that bloodline who had ever looked at me and said, "You're going to do big things, baby girl. And nobody is going to be able to stand in your light." She died when I was 11. I had been trying to earn my way back to that sentence ever since. By the time the sun came up, I had replied to the New York firm and accepted the interview. I had booked a courthouse hearing, and I had mentally started closing the door on a family that had never bothered to open one for me. 3 weeks later, the court approved my name. A week after that, I signed an offer letter as Harper Reed, Associate Attorney, Consumer Protection Division, Hargrove and Associates. The partner who called me with the offer said something I held onto like a lifeline. "We hired you because your writing is ferocious. The world needs lawyers who aren't afraid to burn through the polite version of the truth." Nobody in my family had ever said anything remotely like that to me in my entire life. I sent my parents one email. Short. Clean. No feelings. Dripping off the edges. It said that I had passed the bar. That I had legally changed my name for professional reasons. That I was taking a position in New York. And that I would not be sharing my new address, my new number, or my new name. I told them I loved them, and that loving them had been one of the most exhausting jobs I had ever held, and that I was retiring. My father called my old number 37 times in 4 hours. I know because the voicemails were still there when I finally deactivated the line. My mother sent one text. "You've always been so selfish. Your brother is working day and night." My brother didn't reach out at all. If you've ever waited for a person to become someone they've never been, in order to finally feel like a child who was loved, you already know what that silence tasted like. It tasted like freedom. Eventually. But first, it tasted like every birthday I'd spent helping blow out somebody else's candles. Manhattan did not care who my brother was. Manhattan cared whether I could read a contract at 2 in the morning and find the clause that was cheating somebody out of their rent money. And I could. I was good at it. I was better than good at it. Within 6 months, I was lead associate on a class action against a rental car chain that was quietly reselling totaled vehicles with rebuilt titles and lying to customers about the crash history. Within a year, I had my name on 2 published decisions. My supervising partner, a woman named Dahlia, who wore leather jackets to court and drank black coffee like it was water, pulled me aside after one of our wins and said, "Kid, you have the instincts of somebody who grew up watching someone cheat. Don't lose that. That's the gift." I didn't tell her my brother used to sell yard sale items on Craigslist and swear they were antiques. I didn't have to, for the first time in my adult life. I was not shrinking. I had a small apartment in Brooklyn, with a window that caught the morning light. I had friends who knew me only as Harper. I had a coffee shop where the barista wrote my name on the cup without asking. When people asked about my family, I said the same thing every time. We don't speak. Nobody pushed. New Yorkers respect a closed door. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday in September, a file landed on my desk that made the ground tilt under my feet. A woman named Angela Reyes had driven from Worcester, Massachusetts to a Hargrove satellite intake office in Manhattan because her lawyer back home had told her nobody local would take the case. Her 18-year-old daughter Marisol had bought her first car 6 months earlier. A 2017 sedan she'd saved waitressing tips for. From a dealership called Brooks Premier Auto. 3 weeks after purchase. The front end had collapsed on I-90 inches, a minor fender bender that should have been nothing. Marisol had been pinned inside for 40 minutes. She was alive, but she was not walking. When Angela took the wreckage to an independent mechanic, he found that the frame had been previously bent, straightened, welded, and repainted. The Carfax report her daughter had been handed at signing said the car had one previous owner. No accidents. No damage. I read the file twice. Then I read it a third time, with my hand pressed flat against my desk to stop it from shaking. Brooks Premier Auto. Sama Nama. Same strip mall in Worcester. Same phone number in the signature line of the sales contract. Because I recognized the last 4 digits. My brother had used that number since high school. I walked straight to Dahlia's office and closed the door. "I have a conflict to disclose." She looked up from her laptop and waited. The dealership in the Reyes file is owned by my father and brother. I was born into that family. I legally changed my name 18 months ago. And I have not spoken to them in over a year. Dahlia did not blink. Dahlia never blinks. "Do you want off the case?" I thought about it. I thought about Marisol Reyes in a wheelchair at 18, because a car she'd saved a year for had been sold with a skeleton of welded scar tissue underneath it. I thought about every time I had watched my brother laugh at a customer after they left the lot, bragging about how stupid people were for trusting a handshake. I want to be recused from any decisions that could look like personal revenge. I said, "But I want to be the one who helps build the case. I know how they operate. I know where the bodies are." Dahlia nodded slowly. "Document everything. Disclose in writing. I'll assign a co-counsel for final calls." And Harper, I looked up. "You do this clean. Or you don't do this at all. If this is about family, walk away. If this is about the Reyes, we need you." I told her the only thing I knew for sure. It's about the girl in the wheelchair. And the next girl in the wheelchair. And the one after that? I worked for 6 weeks. I pulled public records on every vehicle Brooks Premier had sold in the previous 3 years. I cross-referenced VIN numbers against salvage auction databases in 3 states. I made anonymous tip calls to the Massachusetts Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. I built a spreadsheet that started with 19 suspicious vehicles and ended with 83 cars my family had sold to working-class people across central Massachusetts that had come from insurance auction totals. I'd been cosmetically repaired in a back lot in Fitchburg and been resold with scrubbed histories. Some of those cars were driven by single mothers. Some were driven by teenagers. Some were still on the road. One evening, I called the Rices on the office line. "Oh," Angela answered. Marisol listened on speaker. I told them who I was. Professionally. I did not tell them who my family was. I told them we had a case. A real one. Bigger than just their vehicle. I told them we were going to sue. And we were going to win. And we were going to make sure nobody else's daughter ended up pinned in a car that should have been crushed into a cube 2 years ago. Marisol was quiet for a long time. Then she said, in the steadiest voice I had ever heard from a teenager, "I'm not scared of them. I just don't want to be the only one." I told her she wouldn't be. I meant it in ways she couldn't possibly have understood yet. 2 weeks into the investigation, my mother somehow found my work email. I will never know how. The subject line read, "Thanksgiving." My stomach dropped the way it used to when I was 12, and I heard the garage door open late at night. Inside, she wrote, "Harper, we know there's been distance, but family is family. Your father is being honored by the local Chamber of Commerce for 10 years of small business leadership. They're doing a ceremony at the dealership on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Reporters will be there. The mayor might attend. Please come. Your brother says it would mean a lot to have both of our successful children present. Come home. Let us show everyone we are united." I read it 3 times. The tell was right there in the middle. Both of our successful children. After 18 months of silence. After not a single voicemail congratulating me on my bar exam. My promotion. My byline in the New York Times on a landmark consumer case. Suddenly, I was successful. Suddenly, I was useful. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted a prop for a photo op. Under any other circumstance, I would have deleted it. But I was 6 weeks into a case that was about to land on my father's desk like a grenade. And the Attorney General was preparing to serve paperwork right around the holiday. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Dahlia and wrote one line. "What if I show up?" She called me 3 minutes later. "Harper, think about this." "I am thinking about it." I said, "They're going to throw a party to celebrate a reputation that doesn't exist anymore. The AG is already coordinating the service date. I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to tip anyone off. I'm just going to stand in the same parking lot where they sold 83 fraudulent cars, and I'm going to be there when the truth walks up the driveway." Dahlia was quiet for a long moment. "Bring a witness. Bring your co-counsel. And Harper, whatever happens, you don't say a word to anyone from your family about the case. Not one word." I promised. I meant it. The Saturday after Thanksgiving. The sky over Worcester was that low gray New England sky that makes everything feel colder than the thermometer says. I pulled into the Brooks Premier Auto lot in a rental sedan with my co-counsel, a patient man named Isaiah, riding shotgun. There were balloons in the school colors of my brother's old high school. There was a local news van. There were folding chairs and a tented stage and a podium with my father's name on a printed banner. My mother spotted me first. She was wearing the pearls my grandmother had left her, the one she had always refused to let me hold. She rushed over, arms wide, face shining with that public-facing version of maternal love she'd spent my childhood perfecting. "Harper, oh my God. Look at you. You came. Your brother will be so happy." Il est me. I did not hug her back. Over her shoulder, I saw my father, older now, thinner, shaking hands with a man in a mayor's sash. My brother was at the podium, microphone already clipped to his lapel, wearing a watch that cost more than the first 2 cars he'd ever sold on that lot combined. He saw me. His face did that thing it used to do when he was 17 and had done something he was scared I would tell our parents about. Surprise. First. Then a slick, recovering smile. He crossed the lot in 3 strides. Sis. Wow. Didn't think you'd actually show. I didn't either. I said. Dad's going to eat this up. You being here. Good optics. There it was. The family dictionary. Translated in real time. Good optics. I nodded. It is good optics. I said quietly. I just wasn't sure for whom. He laughed. Because he had always laughed when he didn't understand something, I said. My mother pulled me toward a chair in the front row. I sat. I watched. My father walked to the podium. He talked about hard work. He talked about risk. He talked about family values. He talked about a community that had trusted his handshake for a decade. He said, without a flicker of irony, that his dealership ran on honesty. A local reporter actually wrote that down. And then, at exactly 2:17 p.m., a dark sedan and 2 state vehicles pulled into the lot. 3 people got out. A representative from the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, an investigator from the Consumer Affairs Division, and a uniformed state trooper. They walked across the asphalt in a straight line. And everybody at the ceremony fell silent at once. The way crowds do when they can feel something bad arriving before they can see it. The AG's rep stepped up to the podium, held up her credentials, and asked my father and brother to step aside. She identified herself. She stated, clearly, that Brooks Premier Auto was being served with a civil complaint for systemic consumer fraud, title washing, and negligent sale of unsafe vehicles, and that state investigators would be on site immediately to secure records. The mayor took a step backward. The reporter from the news van started filming. My mother made a sound I had never heard her make before. A thin, small sound like a plate cracking. My brother turned to me. Across the tented stage. Across the folding chairs. Across a lifetime of being told I was the dramatic one. The jealous one. The difficult one. He looked at me, and his face shifted from confusion to rage, to understanding in the space of 3 seconds. You, he said. It was not a question. I stood up slowly. I did not raise my voice. I didn't bring them here. I said, you brought them here. You brought them here the first time you told a teenage girl that a car with a welded frame was a safe car. You brought them here the first time you laughed about a customer who couldn't read the contract. I just stopped lying to myself about who you are. My mother grabbed my arm. How could you do this to your own family? She whispered. And I swear to you. There were tears in her eyes. But not for me. And not for the Rices. And not for Marisol, who at that exact moment was in a physical therapy session in Worcester, trying to learn how to move her left foot again. The tears were for the banner with our last name on it. Mom, I said. And I used that word for what I already knew would be the last time. A girl can't walk because of what they sold her. A lot of girls. A lot of mothers. You raised me to care about people. I just ended up caring about the ones outside this parking lot too. A reporter shouted a question at my father. I don't remember what it was. My father did not answer. He just sat down on a folding chair and stared at the asphalt like he was watching his own reflection sink into it. I walked across the lot with Isaiah. I got back in the rental car. I did not cry. I did not cheer. I sat in the passenger seat and looked at the dealership sign with my last name on it, and I felt something slot into place in my chest that had been loose for 27 years. The fallout was exactly what my parents had always insisted could never happen to them. And exactly what they had chosen by cutting every corner for a decade. Within a month, Brooks Premier Auto was the lead story on every local news outlet in central Massachusetts. The state froze their business accounts. Civil suits from former customers rolled in. First, a dozen. Then 40. Then more than 70. Former employees came forward with voice memos of my brother, telling them to, quote, stop asking so many questions about paperwork. An investigative reporter from the Boston Globe published a piece that mapped every salvage auction my family had bid at in 3 years. The Chamber of Commerce rescinded my father's award on a Tuesday morning. And I only found out because 3 people texted me the screenshot before lunch. My parents had to sell the house I grew up in to cover legal fees. My brother lost his dealer's license permanently. There were criminal referrals on 2 of the more egregious cases, including Marisol's. And while I cannot tell you the outcome of those, because I was never co-counsel on them, I can tell you he will not be selling cars again in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Probably not in any Commonwealth at all. If you're waiting for me to say I felt pure, clean joy about all of that, I have to tell you the truth. Because anything less is an insult to the Rices. What I felt was something quieter and heavier and more honest. I felt relief. Relief that the universe was finally operating on a logic I had always understood. The one my parents had always pretended didn't apply to them. Actions have consequences. Ignored warnings have costs. You cannot build a legacy on the backs of people who trusted you and expect the foundation to hold. I did let myself enjoy one thing. The Saturday after the news broke, I went out to dinner with Dahlia and Isaiah, and 2 friends from the firm at a tiny Italian place in the village. I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu. I ordered a second glass of wine. When the waiter brought the bill, Dahlia covered it and said, "Tonight you don't pay for anything. Tonight somebody celebrates you out loud." I cried right there at the table. Quietly. Into my napkin. Because I was 30 years old and it was the first time in my entire life a group of people had raised a glass for my name. Because of how the case settled. And because I had disclosed my conflict early and in writing, I was eligible for a portion of the settlement tied to the recovery I had helped make possible. It was a number that made me sit down the first time I saw it. More money than I had ever had in my own name. More money than my parents had ever trusted me with. More money than any of them had believed I would ever make by doing what they once called, to my face, a useless major. I thought about buying things. A nicer apartment. A car. Ironically, a handbag that cost more than my first month's rent as a baby lawyer. Instead, I kept enough for a small down payment on a place of my own, in Brooklyn. And then I did something that would have made the 12-year-old version of me cry for an entire afternoon. I founded the Second Lane Project. It's a nonprofit that provides free legal representation to low-income buyers who have been sold unsafe vehicles, along with a free vehicle history verification service for anyone purchasing a used car from an independent dealer in Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut. We trained a team of volunteer mechanics. We built a database. We partnered with 3 law schools. Our first year, we helped more than 200 families. Marisol Reyes is on our advisory board. She uses a wheelchair most days, and forearm crutches on the good ones. And she is the most fearless 19-year-old I have ever met. And she is applying to law school in the fall. And I am the person writing her recommendation letter. My mother mailed me a letter about 8 months after the ceremony. Actual paper. My new address scrawled on the envelope in her loopy handwriting. Because she had figured out how to find me after all. Inside, she wrote that my father wasn't well. That my brother had moved in with them. That the house was gone. That she had started working again at 59. Near the end. In one line, squeezed between 2 apologies that were not really apologies. She wrote, I think maybe we should have come to your bar exam ceremony. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Not because it healed anything. It didn't. But because it confirmed what I had already known. Since the afternoon, I stood in a courthouse lobby in Boston and heard a brass band playing for my brother in the background of my own biggest day. I had been right to choose myself. I wrote back. One paragraph. I told her I was sorry for the pain their choices were now causing them. I told her I was not the cause of that pain. Only the messenger. I told her I was open to a conversation built on honesty and accountability. And that I was not open to pretending the last 10 years had been anything other than what they were. I signed it Harper. I did not hear back. For the first time in my life, the silence did not feel like punishment. It felt like oxygen. Here's what I want you to hear tonight. Especially if you are listening from a car in a driveway you don't want to go back inside. Or a break room, at a job where nobody knows your full name. Or a bedroom in a house where you have never been the favorite, and you have stopped pretending you don't notice. Blood is not a permission slip to treat you like you don't matter. The word family is not a password that unlocks unlimited harm. A love that requires you to be small in order to stay in the room is not love. It is a hostage negotiation dressed up in a holiday sweater. Your worth is not measured by how loudly the people who share your last name cheer for you, or whether they cheer at all. It is measured in the quiet work you do when nobody is watching. In the choices you make when it would be easier to stay silent. In the courage it takes to walk out of a parking lot and never look back. I did not destroy my family. My family built something that could not survive the truth. And when the truth finally showed up in a state vehicle on a Saturday afternoon, I simply refused. For the first time in my life, to stand in front of it with my body and block the view. So if you are listening and you have ever been the one in the back row of your own life, hear me. You are allowed to change your name. You are allowed to change your city. You are allowed to change your entire understanding of who you are supposed to be loyal to. You are allowed to love someone from a distance that keeps you alive. And if anyone ever tells you that speaking the truth makes you dramatic, remember this. Because I promise you, it has saved my life more than once. The people who benefit from your silence will always call your honesty an overreaction. Say it anyway. Somebody out there is waiting to hear it. Maybe a stranger. Maybe a teenage girl in a wheelchair. Maybe the 12-year-old inside you who stopped raising her hand years ago because she was tired of being ignored. Say it for her. Thank you for listening tonight. I want to hear from you. If you had been me that Saturday in Worcester, would you have shown up to that parking lot? Or would you have stayed in Brooklyn and let strangers deliver the news? And have you ever had to choose between telling the truth and keeping the peace with people who share your blood? Tell me your story in the comments. Tell me what city you're in. Tell me what time it is. I am reading every single one. Because somewhere along the way I figured out something I wish somebody had told me when I was 12. The people who actually show up for you are almost never the ones you were raised to expect. Sometimes they are strangers on the internet at 2 in the morning. And that counts. That counts more than you know.